11 cents of copper on your hook will outfish an $80 electronic fish finder. That is the claim that has been going around for about 3 years now, and I have watched it land in my comments under nearly every video I have ever made. 11 cents beats $80. A little coil of wire humbles the whole tackle industry, and I am the fellow who taught a good many of you the copper trick in the first place. So you would think I would be the last man to stand here and argue with it. I am going to argue with it anyway because it is half wrong, and the half that is wrong is quietly costing some of you the very fish you are trying to catch. Let me put my own money on the table first, because that is the only honest way to start a video like this. Over about 50 years of fishing I have spent, all told, a little over $400 on fish finders. 3 units across 3 decades. And for the first 2 of those units, I will tell you plainly that I believed I had wasted every dollar, and I said so, out loud, to anybody at the bait counter who would stand still long enough to hear it. I was the man telling younger fellows to save their $80 and wrap a penny of copper on the hook instead. I was so sure the electronics were pure vanity that I became exactly the kind of loud, certain doubter I am usually warning you about on this channel. Then I took a trip down to the bayou country in Louisiana, and that water taught me, at the age of nearly 60, that I had been half a fool for 30 years. So here is what I want to do in the next little while. I want to walk you through what is true about the copper beats electronics claim, because a good piece of it is true, and I will defend it to your face. I want to show you what is overhyped, the part where a real, modest edge gets sold to you as 10 times the fish. And I want to show you what is flat false, the part that is costing people fish without their ever knowing why. And at the very end, I will give you the one way of thinking about the 2 of them that has put more fish in my own bucket than either camp's slogan ever did. Both camps are partly right. The truth sits in the gap between them, and that gap is where I want you to live. Let me start with where this claim even came from, because it did not fall out of the sky. A few years back, a handful of videos went around showing a leather-handed old man outfishing a fellow in a $60,000 bass boat, the old man with nothing but a cane pole and a coil of wire. It is a wonderful story, and there is real truth sitting under it. But what spread was not the truth. It was the slogan, 11 cents versus $80. The number does half the work for you, because a small price beating a big price feels like justice, and we all like to watch the little fellow win. So the claim hardened into a kind of team sport. There is a copper team that says the electronics are a scam the industry invented to empty your wallet. And there is a finder team that says the copper crowd are a pack of superstitious old-timers who would not know sonar from a divining rod. I have stood in both of those camps in my life, with both feet, loudly. They are both partly right, and they are both selling you a piece of nonsense along with the part that is true. So let me defend the copper first, because it is the side people expect me to defend, and it has earned it. What is true is this: a bare copper wire, wrapped on a steel hook, makes a faint galvanic current in mineral pond water, a tiny electrical signal, and bottom feeders like catfish and carp and bullheads read electrical fields in the water the way you and I read light. That is not folklore, and I am not guessing. A scientist named Hans Lissmann worked out the basics of fish electroreception back in 1958, and you can find his work cited in any university fisheries library standing today. The catfish has been finding food in black water by feeling faint current for 40 million years, long before there was a tackle shop to argue about it. So in close, in stained or muddy or low-light water, where a fish is already within a few feet of your bait but cannot see it, That copper signal helps it turn the last little distance and find what you have already thrown. On my own home pond, there is a drop by an old willow where the bank falls off into 4 feet of tea-colored water. And on a still evening, I can wrap a hook with 11 cents of copper and pull catfish off that drop until my arm is tired. That part of the claim is real, and I defend it without a wobble. Now here is where the claim gets overhyped, and I want you to hear this part carefully because it is the most useful thing in this whole video. The copper helps a fish find your bait in the last few feet. It does nothing at all, to tell you where the fish are in the first place. And those are two completely different problems. On that home pond, a 1/4 acre of water I have fished for 40 years, I do not need a single thing to tell me where the fish are. I know that pond the way I know the back of my own hand. I know the drop by the willow, the spring hole in the far corner, the mud flat that warms first in the spring and pulls the carp up onto it. So on my home water, the copper is the whole game, because the hard part, the finding part, is already solved by 50 years of memory walking that bank. The slogan takes that exact situation, my situation, a man fishing water he has known his whole life, and it sells it to you as a law of nature. It is not a law of nature. It is one man fishing his own backyard. 11 cents beating $80 on water you already know by heart is true. It is just a narrower truth than the slogan lets on, and the narrower truth is the one that will actually help you. Which brings me to the bayou, and to the morning I was wrong. About 30 years into my fishing life, I went down to Louisiana to visit an old friend named Carl, a man who had fished that bayou country for 60 years and had forgot more about it than I will ever learn. And I walked onto his boat with my coil of copper and my Lancaster County confidence, and that water humbled me inside of an hour. Because a bayou is not a 1/4 acre pond. It is miles of channels and flats and old river runs and drowned timber and holes that drop from 3 feet to 20 with no warning at all. The whole of it the color of strong tea, none of it readable from the surface. The sun came up over the cypress and the water just lay there flat and brown and gave away nothing. My copper was on my hook doing its honest little job the whole time. But my bait was sitting in dead water over barren mud, 40 yards from where the fish actually were. And no amount of galvanic signal on this earth will bring a catfish across 40 yards of empty bottom. The copper helps a fish find your bait. It cannot find the fish for you. That is the whole lesson, and I paid 30 years to learn it. Carl had an old fish finder, a cheap one, nothing fancy, the screen scratched and the bracket held on with a hose clamp. And he watched me strike out for a full morning without a word, the way a patient man watches a stubborn one. Then he turned that little screen toward me and showed me the bottom dropping away into a hole and a cloud of marks stacked up tight inside of it. And he said, "Son, your wire is fine, but you are fishing the parking lot. Put it in the room where the people are." We moved the boat 60 feet, no more than that, and dropped over that hole. Copper on the hook, the same as before. Nothing changed but the spot. And I caught more in the next 2 hours than I had all morning, and more than I would have believed that water held. The copper did its job. The finder did its job. Neither one of them could have done the others. And the man who had spent 30 years telling people the electronics were a scam stood on the back of that boat feeling about 2 inches tall. Because I had been confidently, loudly, repeatedly wrong about a real thing for half my life. So here is what is flat false. Because there is a piece of this claim that goes past overhyped and into doing real harm. The false part is the idea that a fish finder is a scam, a vanity, a thing the industry cooked up to trick you out of your money. That is not true, and believing it hard costs people fish season after season without their ever knowing why. A fish finder is sonar, plain and simple. It sends a ping of sound down through the water. The sound bounces off the bottom and off the air bladders inside the fish, and the unit draws you a picture of what is down there under the boat. It is not magic, and it is not marketing. It is the same physics that has guided ships through deep water for 100 years, shrunk down to fit in the palm of your hand and sold for the price of a tank of gas. To call that a scam is to confuse two different jobs. And the people who believe the slogan hard enough to refuse a finder outright are the very people standing on dead water with a perfectly good bait, blaming the weather, blaming the moon, blaming everything but the one thing that was actually wrong, which is that there were no fish under them to catch. And I will say the other half of that fairness out loud, because the finder camp earns a correction too, and I am not here to switch teams, only to leave both of them. A fish finder will show you exactly where the fish are sitting, and it will not put a single one of them on your hook. It finds them. It does not make them bite. I have watched grown men stare at a screen lit up full of marks and go home skunked because their bait was wrong, or their presentation was clumsy, or they had no faint signal on the hook to draw that fish the last few feet through the murk and make it commit. The screen gives you the address. The copper rings the doorbell. A man with only a screen and a man with only a wire are each carrying half a tool, and each of them, I promise you, is dead certain the other one is the fool. Now I owe you a self-correction plainer than the one I have already given, because I told you at the front that this whole video is a man admitting where he was wrong. For 30 years I told people that fish finders were money straight down the drain, and I told them with the full, easy confidence of a man who had only ever fished water he already knew. I mistook my own backyard for a law of the universe. That is the most common mistake there is in fishing, maybe in anything, and I made it loud, and I made it long, and I made it to a lot of younger men who trusted me. What changed my mind was not an argument, because nobody ever argued me out of it. It was one humbling morning on water I could not read, with a friend who could, and a scratched-up little screen that showed me the room I had been fishing 40 yards outside of. I am not too proud to tell you that. If I were, I would not be much use to you at all. So here is the one useful way to hold all of this, the takeaway worth more than either slogan put together. Ask yourself a single question before you ever pick a side. Do I know this water, or do I not? If you are fishing a pond or a stretch of bank you have known for years, you do not need electronics, and the 11-cent copper trick on a known honey hole will outfish $1,000 of gear every time, because you have already solved the only problem the gear was ever going to solve for you. But the day you launch on strange water, big water, deep or sprawling or stained water you simply cannot read from the top, a fish finder is not a vanity. It is the cheapest guide you will ever hire. A borrowed one, or a used $80 unit off the classifieds, will pay for itself in a single trip and then keep paying. They are not rivals. One finds the fish. One helps the fish find your bait. The man who carries both and knows in the moment which problem he is actually solving beats the man in either camp on any water you care to name. And let me save you some money on the finder side, because I do not want you running out to buy the most expensive screen in the store and then blaming me when your wallet is light. You do not need it. For pond and small lake work, a used unit for $60 or $80, the kind a bass fellow trades in every other spring, does everything you will ever ask of it. You are looking for two things on that screen, and two things only. The depth, so you know the moment the bottom drops into a hole or climbs up onto a flat. And the hard returns, the bright line that shows you brush, sunk timber, a creek channel, the structure that holds fish in the first place. The arches and the little fish-shaped marks are a bonus, and half of them are bait or bubbles anyway, so do not lose any sleep trying to read them like a book. Find the depth change. Find the structure. Drop your copper-wrapped hook right into it. You can learn that much in a single afternoon on the water. Everything past that, the lake maps, the down imaging, the color screens, the subscriptions, is for tournament men chasing a paycheck, not for you and me trying to put a few catfish in a bucket before the light goes. Let me give you a fellow's story to make it land, because I got a letter that says it plainer than I can. A man named Wendell, 64 years old, out near Paducah, Kentucky, wrote to me after he heard me talk up the copper. He had wrapped his hooks faithfully, just like I taught, and he was still getting skunked on a big reservoir arm he had only just started fishing. He was angry, a little, and I do not blame him, because the trick had not delivered what he expected. And what I wrote back to Wendell was the same thing Carl told me on the back of that boat. The copper is fine, Wendell. You are fishing the parking lot. That reservoir was brand new water to him, deep and featureless from the surface, and his good bait with its good signal was sitting out over empty bottom the whole time. He borrowed his son-in-law's old finder, found the creek channel cutting through, and a sunk brush pile in about 11 feet of water, dropped his copper-wrapped hook right into it, and doubled his best day on that lake inside of one evening. He did not need to throw the copper away. He needed to stop fishing 40 yards from the fish. Those are different problems, and the day he saw they were different, that whole lake opened up for him. So why did I make this video when it would be easier and a good deal more popular to keep telling you the wire beats the world? Because the slogan, 11 cents beats $80, is the kind of half-truth that feels like wisdom in your hand and fishes like a curse on the water. It is true on the water you know, and false on the water you do not. And nobody selling you that slogan ever stops to tell you which water you happen to be standing on. The copper is real. The finder is real. The only scam in the whole business is the idea that you have to pick a team and defend it. Carry the wire for the water you know. Carry or borrow the screen for the water you do not. And be a little more suspicious from now on of any man, including the one who first taught you the copper, who tells you one cheap trick beats everything, everywhere, always. The pond does not care about your team. It only cares whether your bait is sitting in the room where the fish are. Next time, I want to take you to something a lot of good folks waste $50 on at the tackle counter, when a bag of cotton balls and a $3 bottle from the baking aisle will do the same honest job for pennies. Tell me your county and your water below, big lake or little pond, and tell me which camp you have been standing in, because I have stood in both of them with both feet, and I will not judge you for either one. I read every comment. The water keeps teaching me, and I am still learning. So are you. I will see you next time.